Okay, so the pituitary gland, as we said before, is this small, tiny little gland at the base of your brain. It may seem like not very important at all, but it is so important that it's sometimes called the master gland. It creates hormones that affect all kinds of things in your body, including other glands that then will produce hormones because of the hormones that were produced by the pituitary gland. So it's going to affect your brain, your bone, and your muscle, your skin, your thyroid, your testes, ovaries, your mammary glands, your breast, your kidneys. All of these things are affected by the pituitary gland. Now, one of the things that it produces is the human growth hormone. So that actually produces a hormone that reacts with the liver, which then produces a hormone which tells the bones and the muscles to grow. And you can perhaps figure out that if there's a problem with that and there's too much human growth hormone, we have a body that grows too large. The opposite, like this gentleman, I think he was the tallest man in the world at one time. He had an overproductive pituitary gland where it made too much human growth hormone. Now, the opposite can also happen. If you don't produce enough human growth hormone, you can be very small. So it's important that your hormones are in balance. But this isn't the only thing it affects. Obviously, it also, you can see, affects your testes or ovaries, depending on if you are a male or a female. It produces a couple of hormones that say, hey, it's time to start maturing. Ovaries start maturing those eggs. Testes start producing sperm. The pituitary gland is responsible for puberty. Okay, so in your notes, the location is the base of your brain, sometimes called the master gland, which secretes hormones that control other glands and also controls body activities directly, like growth and puberty. Please remember that at any time you should pause this video to catch up with the writing. Okay, now we're going to get into the reproductive glands, testes and ovaries. We will start with the ovaries. In our next lesson, we'll learn more about fallopian tubes, uterus, and all of that, but today we're just focusing on the ovaries. This is where all of the eggs are stored, and it also is a gland that produces hormones like estrogen. So it's in the lower pelvis of females, controls maturation, becoming mature, and reproduction, secretes the hormone estrogen, which controls the body changes and egg development. So you know, as puberty hits, girls' bodies start to change, breasts start to develop, get curvier hips, and this is because of the hormones being released. Okay, so what's really interesting about the hormones, if you look, they're not constantly being pumped out at the same rate. So the glands aren't constantly making a certain amount of estrogen, for example. Just kind of like the adrenaline would kick up production if need be. So does the ovaries release different amounts of estrogen and other hormones at different time in the menstrual cycle. So if you look at this graph here, you should notice what happens after a spike in estrogen. As more estrogen is being produced, right afterwards, we get the egg released. That hormone, that increase of the hormone, is a signal to the egg to be released and helps it mature. Okay? Now, after the egg is released, the uterus is preparing for a potential pregnancy. So this other hormone called progesterone starts increasing. But if there is no pregnancy, then the level of that hormone goes down and the lining breaks down, and and we have a girl's period. Okay, we can see that in this animation as well. This is really cool because you can see, this will show a graph, and you can see what happens in the uterus and the ovaries, fallopian tubes, as the level of hormones change. This is going to show 4 different hormones and what happens through the 28-day cycle. So you notice how estrogen is spiking, and then you see the egg being released. Did you see it go from here? If you didn't see it, rewind it and take a look again. You see how the uterine lining changed as the progesterone levels increased, and then decreased. That lining was shed because it wasn't needed, as there was no fertilized egg. Okay, now let's look at the gentleman. We've got the testes. The testes are here in the scrotum outside of the body. What's important for sperm production, for healthy sperm production, is that they need to be a couple, 2 to 3 degrees cooler than the rest of your body, which is quite warm at 37 degrees. So they need to be a little bit cooler, hence the reason why they are outside the body in the scrotum. Okay, so we've got the location in the scrotum, controls reproduction and male characteristics. We talked about the girls' bodies changing, but the boys' bodies are changing too. Your shoulders are getting broader, your voices are getting deeper, and hair is starting to grow in different places. We've got under your arms, on the pubic region, even on your face, and eventually you have to start shaving. All of this is controlled by the hormones that are produced in the testes. It secretes the hormone testosterone, which controls physical changes and sperm production. Okay, you have this little diagram in your notes, so let's just point out where the glands are that we've talked about so far. The pituitary gland is right up here at the base. The testes are right down here. And this is the ovaries. We've got a couple of these other glands that we're going to, well, we talked about the adrenal gland right here on top of the kidneys. And then we're going to talk just briefly about the thyroid and the pancreas. Now, these aren't the only glands in the body. You see a line here. This is actually for some gland called the parathyroid. But that is not something we're going to worry about. I'm going to tell you about the thyroid and the pancreas as good information to know, but not directly relating to the reproductive system, so it's not something I'm going to test you on. Okay, let's talk about the thyroid. The thyroid is here at the base of your neck. It controls how fast your body uses food, which is your metabolism. So again, it's important that your body is producing the correct balanced amount of this hormone so that you have a regular metabolism. If the hormone wasn't being produced, if the thyroid wasn't working as it should be, then your metabolism could be lower and you wouldn't burn up the food that you intake as fast. If it was producing too much, your metabolism would speed up and you would have problems maintaining a proper weight. Your pancreas is a gland near your stomach, and it controls the amount of glucose or sugar in your body. So it secretes this hormone called insulin, which controls the level of glucose in your body, or in your bloodstream more specifically. And if your pancreas doesn't work very well and doesn't produce enough insulin, then too much sugar builds up in your bloodstream, which can cause all kinds of problems. And that's what we call diabetes, type 1 or type 2. In type 1 diabetes, you don't produce insulin at all. In type 2 diabetes, you produce some, but it just is not enough to control the level of sugar in your blood. Okay, so that is hitting the high points of our endocrine system and how it affects our reproductive system.